All right, we are underway. Thank you, Patrick, for coming on this call. And this is a game day situation that I'm very excited to talk about. It's funny because when we went through all of this, I had texted some friends. I was like, dude, I think I was just in one of the crazy, at least one of the top 3 craziest attempt battles I've ever been in. You kind of blew my mind with the moves that you were making in there. So very excited to go through this. So introductions. This is Patrick Carr from the Strength Guys, one of the best game day coaches out there, from what I've seen and the times I've gotten to work with him. So go ahead, Patrick. Let's get this started.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and definitely a fun way to start the NAPF week. And I joked with a lot of my people too that I put everything we had out there on our day one. So, but no, I mean, and I knew, to kind of give some context to this, that Ronnie, you and I were coaching against each other. You're not a dummy. You and I learned from a lot of the same people. So I knew that unconventional warfare was going to be needed if I was going to pull this one out. So yeah, let's get to it.
I feel like in this situation, which I'm about to lay out right now, it's kind of hard to be conventional, right? Is we had 2 lifters that it's funny because their lot number was right next to each other even.
Yep.
Not that this matters, but they had the same last name and their first names rhymed. Tuan Nguyen and On.
It adds to it.
It adds to it. We were playing with chips on squat, bench, and deadlift, all North American records. And ultimately, all 3 lifts were strength-wise probably within 5 kilos of each other, if not right on the dot. So it made for some fun. I think we should start off with squats and then go from there. And first off, I didn't recognize that Tuan's top end was going to be so high, even though I had we had the same data, right? I didn't realize he was going to be like 210.5 strong. But our game plan in squat initially was On wanted 218. He had a battle with some people over at nationals, and some weird stuff happened with the scoring table that kind of screwed him. That's why he didn't go to Worlds. So he essentially got handcuffed because of a chip and whatnot. And anyways, so his goal was to hit a certain record, and that was 218, which in training he was strong enough for. So that was our game plan going in. We're like, we want that, like, we're really going to just put out of our mind anything that Tuan was doing, and we wanted a 218. So that was where the attempt selection came, where we opened at 200, went to 209.5 just to carry a chip, God forbid anything were to happen. And then the goal was to go to 218. But when I seen that 209.5, I knew On was 218 strong, but we needed it to be to the standard. So I'm like, I talked him down to 216. We loaded that. Sure enough, he got called though on depth 3 red lights, which was very surprising because he's been pretty good with his depth. And so that's kind of how we landed on that number. I am curious a bit of what your guys' process on squats.
Yeah, so we knew, or I knew at least, Tuan's coached by Ben Escrow, so I knew he was prepared and ready for the day. He was coming in stronger than he ever had been. And the meet was a pretty healthy, sizable PR for him. I knew we all kind of expected to not have the body weight advantage, and that played out like we had suspected. And at the beginning, as soon as the order was posted, and at weigh-ins, I quickly put everything together. I didn't have lot advantage either. Once I saw your opener, I had, through scouting, I suspected that we would squat before you, and we did, just because of the jumps. And my goal from a strategy standpoint was to simply pick up the chip before you added to the record. So at that point in time, we achieved that. It got the chip, and then you also you also had the chip, and you tried to add to it. So in my mind, we were in a good spot coming out of squats, and kind of the best spot we could be in up until that point.
It's funny because when I loaded 216 and we missed and you hit, because we went 209.5, and obviously you guys aren't going to go 210 because you need to carry a chip, so you went 210.5, and you carried your chip, and when On didn't get it, Rodney Elm pulled me aside, and he was this is why I love Rodney, because he's we bounced stuff off each other, but he was like basically giving me shit like, why did you go 216? He goes, what's the significance of that number? He was like, you could have gone 211. You could have gone.
He told me the same.
Yeah. He goes, you're chasing him. What's the significance of it? And I was like, the significance is more kilos. This is a number that I believed in, and it's funny because I've been in these situations, right? And I think that would have hurt us in the end with deadlift. On's deadlift's a wild card, and I don't think that we have the predictability. I mean, he writes his own programming. I just do game day coaching, and it could be plus or minus 5 kilos. I believe we needed that. But it was funny when he was giving me shit about that, and I was like, well, hey, on strength it was good. I was like, the man just needed to seek it a little lower. But anyways, yeah, that was how all that turned out. On the bench, you can lead off bench.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, I was excited that we were benching after you on the opener there, and that was, we were feeling pretty good at that point. We did, after that third squat, we had some cramping issues, and we were trying to kind of nurse that along as we were preparing to warm up for bench, and kind of had it in the back of my head about his ability to keep the same leg drive and push. We kind of discussed that, but to my understanding, we had it back in check by the time bench rolled around. I trying to maximize our subtotal was still the goal, much like it was for the squats. And after the second attempt, 122.5, and I told Twan this, 122.5 was surefire. It was a lock. 125.5, I 100% believed he had the strength for, and I told him, you're going to have to execute, and you're going to have to be 100% on it. I said, but it's there. And, us looking each other eye to eye, I was convinced, and I thought from a strategic outlook on the entire matchup at the end of the day, I had more to gain from trying to add 5.5 kilos to the total and possibly missing than taking the 2.5 and trying to make it up later. Now, hindsight is 2020. We missed. Was it because the leg drive being impacted? Did we miss Groover? Was his strength not there? Doesn't really matter. We missed it. And at that point in time, I knew that we were still in the driver's seat going into deadlifts, and it was going to be a battle because I knew On could hang on to some deadlifts. And again, going against you and knowing you, I knew we were both going to load up and get into it at the end.
Yeah, going into this one, I know we had the lot number and we had the body weight, but I actually wanted On to open a little lighter. He'd been complaining that bench hadn't been going as great lately. He'd actually benched more in training, but this guy trains on commercial gym stuff. He will train under the most worst conditions intentionally, so that when it's in game day and everything's important, he's ready to execute. And so when we went that 112.5, he smoked it. I was like, oh man, we're going 2A. I'm very, very confident in this. And after, obviously you guys did 120 and then we did 120. The move that I should have made, this actually worked in my favor, and it's the same thing with the squat. Like the move would have been to match that 125.5, but I did not do that. I actually loaded 126, and it was again another one of those situations where I was very confident in his abilities. So sure enough, it's funny because going into that third attempt, you guys had missed the 125.5, and in my mind, I'm like, now I'm feeling excited the same way when we missed our third squat that you were feeling, because now we're exchanging blows, right? You gave us one to the chin, and we gave you a jab, and this is where it's fun. I think the athletes are feeling that same pressure, and so that was able for me to give on a little extra hype. I even wrote on his game plan because I didn't want to say this in front of the TC, but I wrote no bitches here, and I showed it to him right when he was walking out, and I may or may not have told him that he couldn't bench as he was setting up for his bench, and had to get the gears turning, and he grinded. It worked. Yeah. He has that. He can turn on that extra gear, right? And so this is where everything started to get fun. We missed a third on squat. You guys missed a third on bench. We're carrying chips here, and let's see, our subtotals. Yours was 330.5, ours was 335.5, and deadlifts was the one where you guys were open significantly higher. And I had this clocked as if you guys had deadlift advantage. We had the body weight and a lot. That's why I even told on. I was like, we got body weight, we got a lot, they got deadlift. I thought like Ton was gonna be pulling, I don't know, maybe 255, 250, something up there. So I knew at this point, because like I've been in these situations with On before where we bumped up our opener to leverage our lot. I was like, we aren't gonna chase, we aren't gonna play all that right now. I go, I need you to save your energy. We're gonna take an easy opener, and we're just gonna take a big jump, and then let everything go from there. So that's kind of the idea behind that opening at 212 and jumping to 232.5.
And this is where I think, just for people learning, scouting can come handy and be useful. I knew, so you looked at that and kind of came to the assessment you just said. But to me, I saw 212.5, and while a lot of people might have been like, oh, this is swinging back in our favor here, I knew that On could take some sizable jumps. And I knew by the end of that the gap was going to close quickly. And this is where forecasted total is not the end all be all, right? So looking at this coming in to deadlifts, my only objective was to stay in the driver's seat. So with that opener deadlift, and stop me if I'm jumping the gun here, but if after we both made our first deadlift, I was at 558 with Twan, and you were at 548, correct? And then, and then I put in the 238. I'm trying to keep the math fun and weird for us, right? And that had, with our second deadlifts that we were sitting on, if we both made our second deadlifts, you and On were forecasted at 568, and Twan and I were ahead then by half a kilo. So again, up until the point we went and pulled the second deadlift, in my mind, we were in the driver's seat because I was going to see what you put in first. And so in my mind, we had the advantage still at that point in time.
That's how I viewed it too. That's how I viewed it. I'm like, dude, we can't chase them. We have to just let it fall. And I think like you hit the nail on the head, like that the forecast is not everything.
No.
Right. Understanding the athlete's history is a big thing when you're doing your scouting. Like if you look at On's history, he has a history of big jumps and short jumps. You can tell. And even On told me, I obviously I had scouted Twan's meet history, but he was like, he takes smaller jumps than I normally do. And I'm like, I recognize this, but I think we were both thinking pretty similar. It's like, I don't care where you start. I'm calculating where you're going to finish. And I believe, I'm like, these guys are in the driver's seat. It's that second deadlift where everything changed. In my perspective.
Yeah, and I'll just pick up on that because this is probably where half the internet will hate me for the rest of my life.
I don't know about all that.
And but so that was that miss on the second. He got called. He had 2 blue cards, and I also learned after this competition how brutal watching the replays of the meet can be, especially from the chief referee vantage point, because you're watching him, you're like, wow, he had so many more kilos. And you're like, but I swear in the coach's box, it did not look that way. Like people are going to think I'm crazy watching the live stream.
Dude, that's video versus in person. Like you actually seen what was going on there.
And he missed that second. And from the coach's box, I could tell he was fighting to lock that thing out.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where it kind of took us both, okay, it was a shock. We had to shake it off. We had to move on. Now, everybody knows the clock is ticking. I have to put an attempt in. This is where I knew, because you guys pulled first, I knew that you were going to put a placeholder in. And you did. You put 250 in.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that. So, and I knew that I didn't want to go up into the world of 250 plus. So I really didn't want to play that game and put a bigger placeholder, because we all saw the same second attempt. And this is again where it's like, again, hindsight's 2020. But in my mind, I knew who I was coaching against. You. I knew if I put 260, you're not chasing me up there and you're not going to run off with me. I wanted to get you back down as low as I possibly could, knowing that my lifter may not be firing on all cylinders, and who knows, maybe just misgrooved it. But I wanted to bring you down as low as I possibly could. Hence why, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense because of how that second moved, right? If somebody's second moves fast, then you're playing the game of you put the placeholder and the other people got to guess what you got.
And I could tell, because it's important to note, like we've all been on both sides of this, right? We've been on there. Oh, there's blood in the water, like we need to capitalize. And then we've also been like, we're trying to catch up now because we just dropped the ball. I quickly sensed on that, because I still think you were around the table or behind the curtain. You weren't very far away after Twan pulled that second. Like, I had the feeling that other people perceived there was blood in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, putting 245, a believable attempt, was more strategy, because in my mind it was that, okay, they're showing their cards right up front, right? And this is what they've got. And now you're going to drop, hopefully, and come down from the 250s. And you did. And I'll let you pick up there, because you ultimately made the decision to drop.
Yeah. So, again, when you were in the, I went to 245 or 250, and you went to 245. So I had the placeholder at that point in time. There was some other attempts that were within close proximity, but this is where there's something that you said to me, and you looked at me like with a serious look in your eye. You're like, I broke the game. And I was thinking, like, excuse my language, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And that kind of hit it at me. I'm like, he's about to screw with me. And so, anyways, you had the 245, and I had the 250 placeholder, and we were letting a lot of attempts go by. and then you dropped down to 238. And I having lot, and it took me a while because I kind of blacked out and forgot what I had even dropped down in the first time. Like, and truth be told, we had to search through these attempts in order for me to figure it out.
And real quick, because this is important, 238. The reason I dropped to that was because that was a second attempt that we just missed.
Yep.
So again, trying to feed into, okay, this is believable. He got called on a technicality, and it looked tough at lockout. We're going to repeat it because that's all we've got. Right?
I 100% believed it. I even seen you and Rodney Elm standing and talking a little bit, and I was like, okay, like I'm like Rodney gave talk some reason into him. He had some blue cards. Like they're going to take what they can and hope for us to mess up. So that like a lot of times I'm not going to chase people when they're doing that. I talked about that in a Powerlifting Now video, that like most of the time, like experienced coaches aren't going to chase the other person, but this was a situation where it was so believable, you had me fooled. And so you dropped to that 238, and I had to match it. We did have another guy that was pulling 237.5, and so now like we're right next to each other, and I did have lot and body weight, but then at the last second, you went from that before they loaded up the weight, you went from that 238 up to 245, and so I was standing right there. I had on ready to go, and I seen you go to the table, and I was like, oh man, here it goes. And this is as they were getting ready to load the bar before they call bar is ready. So like the timing you had was crazy. And so I followed you, and I seen over your shoulder the 245, and then you dropped it, and I said, I asked him what was that, and it was 245, and my brain had about 2 seconds to put a card in, right? And so luckily my brain associated my 240 with your 245 equaling 575.5. It wasn't even true calculation. It was just I matched this number with that number, and that's a lot of like for people listening. If under pressure, it's hard to do basic math, but if you can calculate a certain number, okay, this number covers this and this one covers that, and you have these two, that simplifies a lot of things. So luckily you had chose a number that I had already done math for, right? So that's how I was able to drop that 240 card in like right after you. And when we talked after the fact, I remember saying, dude, if you would have loaded 246.5 or like something where I wouldn't have had to stop and do math, that 2 seconds it would have taken extra to calculate whatever it is, I would have been stuck at 238 because they were about to call bars loaded. They were already playing. Like it's funny because when I'm talking to people about game day coaching, I'm like, you got to wait until you put you change your attempt. You got to wait a little longer. You got and I've learned you are great at you wait even longer than I do, right? And I mean, Rodney and some of the other guys, they're like, I don't know if I could have calculated it that fast. And for me, it was just I had associated a different number with it. So, anyways, a second more, we would have been stuck at 238, and there would have been nothing we could have done about it.
And look, it's like you said, under pressure. I honestly, I mean, I wish I was good enough to have had the thought to put a chip and make the math hard. But that saying, you revert back to your training and what you've done the most reps on, right? And in that moment, because I was holding it up to the last minute. Again, I know who I'm going against, and you've done the rodeo before. I'm not gonna get one over on you. I quickly, in that moment, went back to what I thought my lifter could pull. Because at the end of the day, that's what you do, right? On the last change. Mm-hmm. Now, it should have been 245.5 or 246 or 244.5. The chip should have been there. It should have been a weird number. And yeah. And I also you said before, you already did the math for it, right? I already flashed 245 in the beginning. So I could have put that one at 247.5 in the beginning, the first time I showed 245. So I'm super thankful for that entire competition, because I think both of us are kind of peripheral vision on what we're going to be looking at and able to see in a high pressure scenario is going to be that much better after that. And even, I don't know about you, but us both having chips and pretty much playing with them from start to finish, and the math just kind of being annoying the entire day, like it was. And I even had to think when I was calling chips. I was talking to Ronnie about this on bench and deadlift. I was trying to make sure that whatever I put in didn't like round off that number to something that made the math easy again. So I was thinking there about the math and trying to keep it to a certain degree of, difficulty. I just went back to the basics at the very end. So that might be a really awesome plan that almost was. But I mean, hats off to you and on. I mean, and the other thing worth noting, one, I did put in, and of course, watching the live stream, Twan came out and he did a much better job in terms of executing that third deadlift.
Looked like he could have pulled 250s, just like I was
right.
anticipating in the beginning.
Right, and that hurt my soul because again, I mean, those are things as coaches you try and get, and I tell everybody you got to take one lift at a time. Mm-hmm. But at some point you do need to recognize the situation and load up. But yeah, I mean, in the moment, for whatever reason, the sum of all the things that had happened beforehand, I thought that was the number. But yeah, no, it was an awesome time. You kept on in the pocket. Twan was ready to roll. I think they were both fantastic all the way up to the end. And I'm glad that we got to go back and forth like that.
It was a good time. It was a good time. And I mean, I think like one last thing to add to that, like there was something that you touched on and you talked about like when you're playing with these chips and this can happen in the nationals or wherever else where maybe you might be carrying a chip on two lifts. Like there are certain chips that are going to negate the chip that you're already carrying, and you need to be prepared to not load that number.
Yeah.
This was one of those situations. I came across a couple of those situations at NAPF where I'm like, oh, okay, I can't load this one. I have to load a different one. And anyways, I'm glad you mentioned that. And then I think one last thing that I wanted to touch on as powerlifting coaches, when we are doing these things, right, we calculate in 2.5 kilo increments. My brain does. I'm sure for you, if you see somebody at, you like your brain just, it doesn't even have to calculate it. It knows the number. If it goes up 5, from 240 to 245, okay, you add 5 to whatever you're doing. It goes up 2.5, you add 2.5. For the people who haven't been in these situations, when you haven't got a lot of reps, because people only get so many reps at chips, right? When you haven't got all these reps at chips and then you have the pressure, that adds time to those calculations. And I didn't even realize it till afterwards. I'm like, man, like had we, and this is something that like I had not been exposed to this type of situation with this type of depth on the chips. I've gone back and forth with chips, but not like this. Even I wouldn't have thought, oh, if it was 248, right, or 248.5 or 246.5, something like, even I wouldn't have thought to do that. But this is a learning lesson. So I think if there's anything that I want people to take from this is just understand how you calculate things fast, because how you calculate things fast, other people probably do the same. And if you are at liberty of carrying the chip, like and you're back to back, some people had different opinions that this was not a good strategy. Others did. I am because I was on the opposing side and this one damn near screwed me. I think that, hey, given that he missed that Twan missed the 238, I think this was a good strategy, because had I not been, my brain not associated my 240 to your 245. So anyways, I say all that because, you know, I got to salute you guys for that one. That one, you know, that one, it kind of broke my brain for a second. So yeah, it was a fun battle. They got to run it back. They got
I know they're both already looking for it. Yeah.
Lake Tahoe.
And for you and me, I want to run it back.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Lake Tahoe 2027.
That's it. And yeah, and for people that listen to this, and I know I've said since I've started handling people, I tell Matt and Gary this all the time. I truly think the only way to get better at this is to literally be in the situation. And it's unfortunate that I like to prepare and try and over prepare for everything, right? But until you are in that situation, it doesn't feel the same way. It doesn't always pan out the same way. And so, I mean, you just got to keep getting in it. That's why I'm very thankful that right after the competition, we got together and tried to write all this out before we forgot, because there was a lot going on, you know? And I think to study it, break it down, run through the reps, and that way, hopefully, when you find yourself in a high pressure scenario, you're able to come up with the right answer faster. So,
agreed. Spoken like a true prodigy.
So, yeah, but and I just want to say that it does matter. I think an overlooked side of game day coaching, it does matter who you coach against, because just like the athletes are going through their own psychological battles with themselves and with others, the coaches go through it too, and especially at the higher level. So, and I knew you had a good reputation. I've known you for a while now. I've seen the quality of your work. I've trusted you with athletes I've handled, and that's why I went down the slippery slope of trying to get cute with it. So the normal I don't think was going to cut it. So
yeah, man, it's all I know is now I'm because being exposed to this type of situation, I'm like I am going to be looking out for these types of situations. And it's funny because I tell myself, don't chase. I remember like at Worlds last year, I was in a situation with a Brazilian guy, and he was trying to get me to chase him. I probably could have got him to use his last attempt change had that happened, but anyways, we live and we learn, right? And so I will take back this rule that it's in my brain, and like maybe 95% of the time I won't chase. But there are times when okay, there was actually a rule that you sent me. It's you don't have rules, you have standards, right?
Yeah.
If I keep that rule like at all times, right, I could prevent myself from coming out victorious, or my athlete coming out victorious in certain situations, right? But anyways, this was a great battle, great time. Learned a lot from it. I hope people can learn from this as well.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time to go over it.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. See you, Ronnie.